In 2019, 7 Asian nations announced they were building their own version of Malaysia's economic miracle. By 2024, every single one had either abandoned the plan or watched it collapse. The cost? Over $847 billion in wasted investment. If you've ever wondered why some countries seem to have it all figured out while others keep repeating the same mistakes, this story will shock you. But wait. Before we begin, please subscribe to ensure that you never miss out on any of my essential stuff. Comment "I subscribe" below, and I will personally welcome you to our community. With that said, let's get started. Malaysia transformed from a rubber plantation economy to a tech manufacturing powerhouse in just 40 years. They went from exporting raw materials to producing 7% of the world's semiconductors. 7 countries looked at this success and said, "We can do that too." But here's what nobody tells you. Every single one made a critical mistake that doomed them from day one. And that mistake? It's so obvious you'll wonder why no one saw it coming. Let's count down from the smallest failure to the biggest economic disaster in modern Asian history. Myanmar spent $12.4 billion trying to replicate Malaysia's special economic zones. Within 3 years, 89% of foreign investors had pulled out. Meet Thant Zin. He's 34, worked as a factory manager in Yangon. In 2016, when the government announced their Malaysia-style manufacturing zones, Thant saw his future. The promise was simple: we're building the next Penang. Penang, Malaysia's tech hub, produces $68 billion in electronics exports annually. Myanmar wanted that. So Thant quit his stable job to work in a brand new tech park. He recruited 847 workers. They were going to make computer components for the world. 2017 came. The tax incentives arrived. The factory got built. But the infrastructure never showed up. Electricity cuts hit daily, sometimes for 6 hours. The roads to the port remained unpaved. Shipping containers got stuck in mud during monsoon season. By 2019, Thant's factory closed. All 847 jobs disappeared. Myanmar copied Malaysia's tax incentives and industrial zones. But they missed something fundamental: political stability and consistent policy. Malaysia had the same ruling coalition for 61 years until 2018. Investors knew the rules wouldn't change overnight. The data tells the story. The political risk index showed Myanmar scored 2.1 out of 10 versus Malaysia's 7.8 out of 10, according to the World Bank governance indicators from 2017. But the investors didn't leave because of politics alone. There was something else. Myanmar had no independent judiciary to protect contracts. When disputes arose, investors couldn't trust the courts. In Malaysia, contract enforcement took an average of 425 days. In Myanmar, over 1,200 days, and outcomes depended on who you knew. Myanmar's failure was predictable. But the next country. They had everything Myanmar lacked, and still failed. Pakistan's Vision 2025 promised to copy Malaysia's leap into middle-income status. Instead, their debt-to-GDP ratio exploded from 64% to 78% in just 5 years. Fatima Khan was 29 when she decided to bet on Pakistan's future. She's a textile entrepreneur in Karachi. In 2015, inspired by Malaysian success stories, she opened a small garment factory. The government promised infrastructure matching Malaysia's world-class ports. She invested everything, $180,000 in equipment, hired 34 seamstresses, secured contracts with European buyers. For 1 year, things worked. Then 2018 hit. Power outages became routine. Her machines would shut down mid-production. She lost $34,000 in ruined fabric and missed deadlines. Her European contracts evaporated. By 2020, Fatima closed her doors. "They promised us Kuala Lumpur," she told reporters. We got chaos. Pakistan copied Malaysia's privatization model. They sold state enterprises, created special economic zones, offered tax breaks. On paper, it looked identical. But they missed the foundation, merit-based bureaucracy. In Malaysia, civil servants must pass the Civil Service Aptitude Test with an 85% pass rate. Positions go to the qualified. In Pakistan, according to a 2019 Transparency International report, bureaucratic appointments flowed through political connections. The result? Incompetent execution of brilliant plans. The proof is in the numbers. The Ease of Doing Business rankings from the World Bank in 2019 placed Malaysia at number 12 globally. Pakistan, number 108. Here's what most people miss. Countries that focus on education quality before industrialization succeed 3.2 times more often, according to an Asian Development Bank study from 2020. Pakistan tried to build factories before building competence. At least Pakistan tried to build infrastructure. The next country didn't even get that far. Bangladesh launched Digital Bangladesh 2021, based on Malaysia's multimedia super corridor. Only 23% of planned tech parks were ever built. If you've ever felt frustrated watching your government announce grand plans that never materialize, this will hit home. Rahman Ahmed was 41, an IT professional who'd spent 15 years in Singapore. In 2012, when Bangladesh announced their tech transformation, he felt the pull of patriotism. He wanted to be part of his country's digital revolution. The government promised high-speed internet, tax breaks for tech companies, and state-of-the-art facilities. Exactly what Malaysia did with their multimedia super corridor in 1996. Rahman returned home. 2013 looked promising. The rhetoric was powerful. The vision was clear. But by 2015, the reality set in. Internet speeds averaged 3.7 megabits per second. Malaysia's? 87 megabits per second. His video conferences froze. File uploads took hours. International clients lost patience. By 2017, Rahman moved back to Singapore. The vision was beautiful, he said. The execution was invisible. Bangladesh copied Malaysia's technology parks and digital infrastructure goals. But they missed a crucial detail about sequence. Malaysia liberalized telecommunications in 1987, 9 years before building tech parks in 1996. They laid the foundation first. Bangladesh did it backwards. They announced tech parks while state-run telecom monopolies strangled internet speeds. They built the house before the foundation. The numbers expose the gap. Malaysia invested 8.1% of GDP in infrastructure before their tech push. Bangladesh invested only 2.4%, according to the IMF Infrastructure Investment Database from 2018. But here's something interesting. There's one thing Bangladesh did right that the others didn't. Their garment sector actually succeeded. You know why? Because they didn't copy Malaysia. They specialized in something Malaysia wasn't doing. They found their own path. The lesson? Copying someone else's success means competing directly with them. Creating your own advantage means you're the only option. Unlike Bangladesh, the next country had unlimited money to spend. So why did they fail even harder? Sri Lanka borrowed $8 billion from China to build the next Malaysia. By 2022, they couldn't repay loans and literally ran out of fuel. The entire country collapsed. If you've ever worried about borrowing beyond your means, imagine doing it at a national level. Nadira Silva was 38, working at Colombo's port when the Hambantota Port project began in 2010. The project was modeled directly after Malaysia's Port Klang, one of the busiest ports in Southeast Asia. We were told this would make us the Singapore of South Asia, Nadira remembers. The excitement was real. New jobs, international trade, prosperity for coastal communities. By 2012, The massive port was operational. It looked stunning. Deep water berths, modern cranes, capacity for millions of containers. There was just one problem. Ships weren't coming. In 2017, the port operated at 34% capacity. Sri Lanka couldn't service the debt. China offered a solution. We'll forgive the debt if you give us a 99-year lease on the port. Sri Lanka agreed. Then 2022 arrived. Fuel shortages crippled the nation. Nadira stood in fuel queues for 7 hours just to get to work. We traded our future for a port nobody uses, she said, exhausted and angry. Sri Lanka copied Malaysia's mega infrastructure projects and port-led growth strategy. But they missed the fundamental reason Malaysia's ports succeeded. Malaysia built ports based on existing trade demand. Port Klang handled 13.2 million container units in 2018 because Malaysia already had thriving manufacturing generating that trade. Hambantota was built in an area with minimal economic activity. They built it hoping ships would come. This is the fatal flaw. Build it and they will come versus they're coming, so we must build. The data is damning. Countries that build infrastructure based on speculation rather than demand have a 73% failure rate, according to an Oxford Business School megaproject study from 2016. Imagine building a 6-lane highway through a desert, then wondering why there's no traffic. That was Sri Lanka's strategy. Sri Lanka's mistake was timing. But the next country. They had the timing perfect and still failed. The Philippines tried to copy Malaysia's electronics manufacturing boom. Result? They lost 40% of their foreign investors to Vietnam in just 8 years. If you've ever wondered why some countries can't seem to compete even when they have all the advantages, keep watching. Carlos Mendoza was 45, managing a semiconductor plant in Manila. His facility competed directly with plants in Penang, Malaysia. In 2011, business was good. The Philippines had advantages: better English proficiency, cheaper labor, proximity to markets. Then 2013 hit. Malaysia offered investors 100% tax exemption for 10 years. Carlos watched nervously. In 2014, the Philippines matched the incentive. Problem solved, right? Wrong. By 2016, his plant announced they were relocating to Vietnam. Not Malaysia, Vietnam. Carlos couldn't understand it. We matched their tax breaks. We had better workers. What happened? The answer came down to logistics. Malaysia had built an integrated supply chain ecosystem over 30 years. When a factory in Penang needed a specific component, they could source it locally within 48 hours. The Philippines? 89% of components had to be imported, adding 14 days to production cycles. The data tells the story. Average production to export time in Malaysia, 11 days. In the Philippines, 25 days, according to the World Bank Logistics Performance Index from 2018. The Philippines copied Malaysia's tax incentives and export processing zones. But they missed the invisible ecosystem, the network of suppliers, the logistics infrastructure, the just-in-time delivery systems. Here's what's crazy. The Philippines actually had better English proficiency and cheaper labor costs. On paper, they should have won. But incentives attract investors. Ecosystems keep them. Think about it like this. Offering tax breaks is like lowering the price of admission to a concert. But if the concert venue has terrible acoustics, uncomfortable seats, and bathrooms that don't work, people leave and don't come back. Countries that build supplier networks first see 4.1 times better foreign direct investment retention, according to a UNCTAD report from 2019. The Philippines learned this lesson too late. But the next country. They had the ecosystem, and something else destroyed them. Thailand's Eastern Economic Corridor was supposed to be Malaysia 2.0. Instead, it became a $45 billion example of what not to do. Thailand had everything: infrastructure, political stability compared to neighbors, an established manufacturing base. So what went catastrophically wrong? Somchai Patel was 52 when he decided to bet big. It's 2017, and Thailand's government announces the Eastern Economic Corridor megaproject. Somchai runs an automotive parts supply business. The plan promises tax breaks, infrastructure upgrades, and a manufacturing boom. He invests $2.3 million in a new factory. 2018 arrives. The government changes. New ministers come in with new priorities. The EEC plan gets adjusted. Some incentives remain, others get modified. 2019. Policy changes again. The incentive structure gets reversed. What was tax-free now carries duties. What required permits now needs environmental impact studies that take 18 months. By 2020, Somchai's factory operates at 41% capacity. He's hemorrhaging money. Every election brings new promises and abandoned projects, he says. Thailand copied Malaysia's industrial corridors and automotive manufacturing focus. Both countries are major car producers. But Thailand missed one critical element: policy consistency across political transitions. In Malaysia, development plans are institutionalized. They survive government changes because they're embedded in permanent bureaucratic structures. 5-year plans continue regardless of who wins elections. Thailand. Every new government rewrites economic policy to differentiate themselves from predecessors. The numbers are shocking. Thailand has had 13 constitutions since 1932. Malaysia has had 1. Investors need predictability more than they need tax breaks. You can plan around a 5% tax. You cannot plan around rules that change every election cycle. Countries with a policy consistency index above 7 out of 10 attract 2.8 times more sustained foreign direct investment, according to an OECD investment policy review from 2020. Imagine planning a 20-year factory investment when the rules change every 3 years. That's not business, that's gambling. But there's one thing Thailand did brilliantly that even Malaysia envies: tourism infrastructure and branding. Tourism accounts for 30% of Thailand's GDP versus Malaysia's 13%. They found something they could own. Thailand's instability hurt them. But the number one country on this list? They had stability, money, infrastructure, and still became the biggest cautionary tale in modern Asian economics. Indonesia spent $174 billion trying to become the next Malaysia. The result? An economic growth rate that's actually slower than before they started copying. This hits differently because Indonesia has 273 million people, vast natural resources, and a $1.3 trillion economy. Malaysia has 33 million people. Indonesia should be Malaysia 10 times. Instead, Dwi Hartono was 36 when Jokowi got elected president in 2014. His campaign promised Indonesia's Malaysian miracle. Dwi is an entrepreneur in Jakarta. She saw an opportunity. In 2015, she opened an electronics assembly plant. She expected the boom. The government announced special economic zones, infrastructure projects, deregulation, the full Malaysia playbook. Then reality hit. Getting bureaucratic permits took 14 months. In Malaysia, 3 months. Every permit required stamps from 11 different offices. Bribes weren't optional. They were the actual fee structure. 2019 brought new labor laws that changed retroactively, increasing her costs by 34%. No warning. No transition period. Just sudden enforcement. By 2021, Dwi closed her business. They promised transformation, she said. They delivered paperwork. Indonesia copied everything from Malaysia: industrial zones, palm oil development, tourism campaigns, tech hubs. They studied Malaysia's model obsessively. But they missed the one thing that made Malaysia work: execution speed. From decision to policy implementation in Malaysia, 8 months on average. In Indonesia, 34 months average, according to a World Bank survey from 2019. The corruption data is brutal. Indonesia's Corruption Perception Index, 3.8 out of 10. Malaysia's, 5.1 out of 10, according to Transparency International 2020. Not a huge difference, but enough to matter. Regulatory efficiency? Indonesia ranks 73rd globally. Malaysia ranks 12th. Here's what will blow your mind. Indonesia's GDP is 10 times larger than Malaysia's, yet Malaysia has double the foreign investment per capita. The real problem? Indonesia tried to copy Malaysia's results without copying their systems. Malaysia operates with centralized economic planning but decentralized execution. The vision comes from the top, but implementation happens at state and local levels with authority to act. Indonesia? Decentralized planning with centralized bottlenecks. Every decision gets made locally, then requires federal approval, creating chaos. Imagine having a Ferrari engine but bicycle brakes. That's Indonesia trying to be Malaysia. And here's the cruelest part. Indonesia actually had a Malaysian miracle in the 1980s under Suharto. They sustained 7.2% annual growth for 15 years. Then they dismantled the systems that worked in the name of reform. The data shows countries that reform bureaucracy before infrastructure investments see 5.3 times better return on investment, according to a Harvard Kennedy School study from 2021. So after 7 failures costing $847 billion, here's what nobody's asking. What if they were all copying the wrong thing? Every country copied Malaysia's projects. They should have copied Malaysia's principles. Principle 1. Meritocracy in civil service. Malaysia's civil service exam, established in 1960, ensures competence. If you can't pass, you don't serve. Simple. Principle 2. Long-term planning that survives elections. Malaysia's 5-year plans have run continuously since 1956, regardless of which party holds power. Principle 3. Pragmatism over ideology. Malaysia worked with the West and China. They didn't let politics interfere with economics. Principle 4. Execution before announcement. Malaysia built first, promoted second. Most countries do the opposite, announce grand plans, then struggle to execute. The data that changes everything. Countries that copy institutional frameworks succeed 4.7 times more often than countries that copy infrastructure projects, according to MIT Development Economics Research from 2022. These 7 countries spent $847 billion trying to build like Malaysia. They should have spent $8 million learning to think like Malaysia. And here's the irony that makes this whole story even more interesting. Malaysia itself is now struggling because other countries, Vietnam, Singapore, learned these principles better than Malaysia maintains them. So here's my question for you. Your own country has probably announced some vision plan or transformation strategy, copying another nation's success. Look at these 7 countries. Now look at your government's promises. Which mistakes are they about to make? Drop your country's name in the comments and one promise your government made that sound exactly like Malaysia's playbook. Let's see if we can predict which ones will actually work. Because in 2025, 5 new countries just announced Malaysia-inspired mega-projects. And based on what you just learned, you can probably guess how it's going to end. If this changed how you think about economic development, share it with one person who still believes governments when they promise miracles.